She's on work flower.
Alrighty. How you folks doing today?
Great.
Sound great. That was a nice, great. I like that. In unison too. That was outstanding.
We practiced.
You did practice your script and dialogue? That's good. Awesome. Well, it's great to see all of you here today. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for making the time to be here. It means a lot to me that you're here. More importantly, I think it means more to you and your business and your career and all the people that are depending on you being successful in real estate, right? And sometimes I feel like it's just us sometimes, right? Well, listen, I hear a lot of excuses as why people don't make it to these sessions. You know, sometimes people will say, well, I have a listing appointment. Sorry, I can't make it, John. Or I have a buyer I'm taking out to show a home to. Sorry, I can't. I have a relocation person I need to work with. I'm just so busy. I'd love to make it to one of those sessions. Here's another one. Laugh when you hear this. I'm going to watch it on the DVD when it comes to my office. Right. They never watch the DVD. And there's nothing like being live in the class because it's a lot more interactive. I was watching it on one of the sessions on how to stay motivated all year long. My brother wanted to see it. And we were watching about 10 or 15 minutes into it. And I already started getting a little bored because I'm thinking it's so much better when you're there in person, you know. So anyway, it's a great session. It's great on DVD, but it's nothing like being here live.
Is this being shown next door?
Not today. No. We could have if we had more people here. If we had a few people out in the room, I'd just hook up the wires and we'd been able to see it next door as well on the monitor. And it's just amazing to me that Carlson GMAC has made an investment in your future by hiring me to come out here to Western Mass on a full-time basis to coach and teach and train you on how to make a lot more money per hour in real estate, and only a few people are taking advantage of it. This is something that's not available to your competitors. I'm not available to your competitors. I'm available to you. So it's awesome that you're here, and I really appreciate it. It's great. You should be very happy and excited, and please don't miss another session. And if you have to miss a session, please catch up on it on the DVD. It's really important. There's not one thing more important that you can do in real estate that will make you more money per hour than sharpening your axe and going to training. You see, because while you're out on a listing appointment, and by the way, you can reschedule a listing appointment. You can reschedule a buyer appointment. You can reschedule a rental tour so that it's not on a Friday between 10 to 12. You follow me? And when you do that, you made a commitment to learn how to make an additional 5 or 6 or 7 more deals per year than you would have if you went out on that appointment. See, too many people operate in the method in the mindset of fear. They're afraid that if they don't go on that appointment, they're going to lose a potential listing or lose a potential buyer. I'm afraid not to go to a training class because I may lose 5 to 10 deals a year. You follow me? Because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you're going to miss when you miss it. You follow me? So it makes a huge difference, and it can make a massive impact on your career just by going to training classes as often as you can. The year that I was able to get my GRI and my CRS and my ABR all in the same year, I went from 24 transactions to 63 transactions. I went to more seminars and classes that year than any year in the history of my career in real estate, and I was able to sell more homes. The people in my office, they started to call me a seminarian because I was going to so many seminars. Hey John, where you going? Another seminar? And they're laughing at me and making fun of me and teasing me, and I was just laughing all the way to the bank. And I thought to myself, have you checked MLS lately? You know, have you seen any of my listing agreements with 7% commissions on them, right? Have you driven by the office and not seen me working here late at night when you are? Have you noticed that lately? Why? Because I went to the training classes, I took what I learned, and I implemented the items that I was learning. So it's about working what? Smarter instead of what? Harder. Absolutely. There's always something new to learn in real estate. And I really applaud all of you who are doing it and making that commitment. So Today we're gonna talk about closing for the listing. If you would, go to the last page of your packet, please, and tear it off of your package. Just take it and disconnect it from there. And what I'd like you to do is, if you would please, write your name and put the name of your office on here.
I wrote it.
We all wrote on it.
The guy was giving us.
All right, I got another idea. Watch this. The second to last page.
There you go.
Tear that off. Look at the front. It's about handling common listing objections. Let's look at the front of this page for a minute, please. This is an advertisement for when?
Next Friday.
Next Friday, 10 a.m. And I love what I wrote underneath this, handling common listing objections. What are you currently showing a seller to convince them to list with you when the seller says, we want to interview other agents? Or they say the other agent will take it for 1% less than the brokerage fee you're offering me. Or they say, well, we just want to try it at a higher price. What are you saying? What are you showing them? What are you doing to overcome those objections? And by the way, those are the three greatest and most common objections you're ever going to get in real estate. Right, Judy? Judy's nodding her head. She's saying, oh yeah, we get those all the time. See, if you just mastered 3 objections in this business, you'd close 7 out of 10 qualified listing appointments instead of 2 out of 10 like we were talking about earlier. You're never too experienced to learn new techniques and improve your closing ratio. You know, 2 out of the 3 people that were able to obtain Agent of the Month this month in the Longmeadow office are in this room on a weekly basis. Okay? It's working, gang. It's working. Those who are taking this information and implementing it are enjoying, they're having fun. I can see it in their faces, you know, when they tell me this, and they tell everyone else that they're learning from. So it's great stuff. Next Friday, April 18th, 10 a.m. And you know, I put a different spin on it when I wrote that little phrase on the bottom. It says, it is a wise person who learns from his own experience, and even a wiser person who learns from the experience of others. And that is training, right? Here's how they invented training. You've heard me say this before. Some people went out, did a bunch of stuff, and it didn't work, and they wrote it down and said, well, don't do it this way. And they shared it with other people, said, this is what doesn't work. Then they did a bunch of stuff, and that stuff worked, and they said, oh, well, this works. Do it this way. And they put it all together, and they traded the information with the people that would listen, and that became training. So, listen, you've heard me say this before too, is that I put myself in situations where I was able to fail and make more mistakes than anyone else in my office, but I also was able to sell more homes than anyone else in my office by virtue of doing that. And I don't know the exact statistics, but I remember a long time ago hearing a story about Babe Ruth, and I think the story goes like that he had more strikeouts than anyone else in the league the same year that he had the most home runs. Think about that. But what did people celebrate? The home runs. They don't talk about the fact that he had that he struck out more than anyone else. So how did he do that? He went up to bat more than most people, right? He took a swing at the ball. He tried more, absolutely. So, you know, if some of these things that we're working on, you're learning, if you're feeling a little frustrated, I've got a very, very, very simple answer to any of your questions or your frustration. Go out on more appointments. Take more swings. Go out and put yourself in situations when you're going to potentially fail more, and when you do that, you're going to do what more? Learn more, yeah. You're going to succeed more. You're gonna fail more. You're gonna fail more, and you're gonna fail more. All right. Oh, isn't that exciting, Lauren? Woohoo! When can we go, right?
Sorry.
So do me a favor, turn this page over if you would, please. And put your name and your office. I don't need the address, just the town that your office is in. And if you would, just write a short sentence on how these workshops have helped you in your business. And if it's a good one, I'll make you famous and I'll put your name out there in lights, okay? So if you would, please do that. If you've never been to one of these workshops before, then you might not be able to do that. But maybe, I'll tell you this, if you've never been to one of these workshops before, and you're new to this, because we do have a few new people here, write down at the end of this workshop what you get out of it, what you liked out of it, what you liked from the seminar, what you've learned from it, and how you think this will help you in your business. So, while you folks are doing that, I'm going to go through closing for the listings, the top 5 countdown in reverse order. In number 5, it says, most sellers need very little help reaching a listing decision. Is that true or false? It is false.
It's false.
Yes. Thank you for your testimonials too, by the way, I do appreciate it. And obviously what I want to do with these is I want to use these to help other people help themselves and encourage other people to attend, and that's great. Number 4, why do most sellers say they want to think it over? A, that's how most people make decisions, or B, because most agents either don't close at all or they close too hard. D is correct. Number 3, the best closing dialogue is, well, what do you think?
False.
False. Wow, you guys are tough. That's great. Good job, John. That was good. Number 2, the key to closing for the listing is A, use as much pressure as possible.
No.
This is experience in the front row here talking, folks. Number 2, sit back and let them decide in their own way.
No.
No.
Or C,
C.
take things one step at a time and stay on what?
Track.
Stay on track. Number 1, once you have handed the sellers the pen and asked for the signature, A, wrap up as if it were perfectly normal. B, watch the sellers intently for a hesitation. Can you just imagine that? Or C, keep talking to ease the pressure. A is right. Do you know anybody who does B or C? Yeah? You know anyone intimately who does that? You know? Right? Right? Okay. We had fun with that. Now,
Partially nerves, all that talking.
absolutely, it's all nerves.
Stop talking.
Yeah, stop talking is a good thing, right? Absolutely.
It's harder, it's easier not said than done.
Right.
So I totally agree.
Okay, folks. I want to mention this to you. The skill of closing, because today what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a skill. And the skill of closing is the one thing that separates someone who has a license from someone who is a salesperson. Okay? There's a difference between a licensee and a salesperson in this industry, and it's technique. They've learned what to do, they've perfected it, they're using it, they're doing it, and it's working. So, let me share this with you. Some of you are really good at this, okay? I talked to you about the track, right? To stay on track. And some of you are really good at the LIS. That's lead in, investigate, show and sell. But the T stands for what?
Transaction.
Tie
Tie
down.
Tie down.
Tie down, right? That means to what?
Close.
Close, right?
Yeah.
To close. So when it gets to the closing part, that's the part that separates the, notice I said licensee from the salesperson. I didn't say new versus experienced. That has nothing to do with it whatsoever. There are brand new people in any industry that if they just follow the directions and do the right things, they could beat the pants off of an experienced person. There are experienced people in the business who could beat other experienced people in the business simply by implementing closing techniques. Very simple. And having the huge advantage of their experience in addition to that, okay? Now, there are 2 mistakes that agents make. There are 2 mistakes that they typically make. So what I'd like you to do at this point is I'd like everyone to stand up for a minute, please. Don't worry, I'm not gonna ask you to massage each other's shoulders or anything, okay? Actually, you wanna do that, you can. Just make sure you don't get slapped by the person next to you. And now what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look underneath your chairs to see if you have a little surprise under there for yourself. Look under your chair.
Would that be surprising?
Well, it's actually taped to the bottom of your chair.
I don't think it's on the ones I put out.
Oh, I got it.
Yes, one of them is.
Are you sure?
Raise your hand if you found something. All right, there are 5 people raising their hands right now. There should be 5. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, okay, so we're all set. All right, if you would, have a seat now, please.
Peter six.
I thought it was a candy bar.
Now,
I know.
who has mistake number 1 in their hand, if you would, please? Mistake number 1. Not the key. There are 3 keys and 2 mistakes. Who has the mistakes? Raise your hand if you have a mistake. That's a thumbs down picture.
I do.
You
Okay.
have a mistake, Mark.
Who has number 1?
Mark,
I have a
you do.
mistake.
Mark.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, can you share it with us, what your mistake is?
Okay, waiting for the seller to close themselves.
Waiting for
And by
this.
asking, so what do you think?
All right, so can I have your, yours right there? Okay, great. So mistake number 1, write this down, please. Wait for the seller to close themselves by asking, well, so what do you think? Some agents wait for the seller to close themselves by asking, well, what do you think? Remember what I explained to you earlier? If you leave it up to them to decide, what will they do?
Hesitate.
They'll hesitate, absolutely, and they'll decide not to decide. Absolutely, you got it, John. If you leave it up to them to decide, they will decide not to decide. They'll decide not to make a decision. And in a form, they're hesitating, absolutely. That's mistake number 1. Now,
I know what number 2 is.
yes?
Don't dress badly.
Yeah, right. Based on the photo, right? Who has mistake number 2? Carol, what do you have? Could you read it to us?
Mistake number 2 is make a big deal out of it and separate the close.
All right, let me explain that a little bit. Thank you, Carol. Some agents make a big deal out of it, like, okay, here's what they've done. Now, assuming, gang, now follow me on this before I get into this a little more. Remember, you've pre-qualified the listing appointment. You've gone out on the listing appointment. When you went on the listing appointment, you did what? You
Rang the bell.
rang the bell, you
Smile.
Gave him a
Give him a
Compliment.
Got
And got in the door.
go to the kitchen table, right?
Yeah.
Then you
Break the ice.
break the ice, and then you
Bring him to a
Safe
harbor.
you take them out onto a safe island, right?
Yeah,
Right.
And then you get permission to ask a bunch of
question.
questions, right? Then you get up and you
Look around the house.
look around the house, and then you go back to the,
Table.
Table.
and then you talk about
Closing.
you and your company, right? And then you get an agreement on that. You said to them after they talked about you and your company, you said, well, based on what I've shown you about me and my company, my marketing program, and everything we do and how we do it, if we could agree on price, would you list with me today? And they said,
Yes.
absolutely. I want you to be my seller, right? That's positive thinking. Now, after they've said yes, that you've got into price, right? Terms, and then you talked about the what?
Flies.
Net. I'm catching butterflies with my net,
How much
right?
they're gonna get, yeah.
What they're gonna net in their pocket, right? Because people don't care how much their home sells for, what they really care about is how much they end up in their pocket, right? Work with me, gang, are you with me?
Yes.
Come on, let's go, right? So now, you show, and then they agree with what they get, and you're gonna say, oh, we're gonna net somewhere around so-and-so, right around this range, anywhere between $10,000 and $15,000, is that okay with you? And they said yes. And assuming you've said, do you have any questions, and they've agreed, and that you've answered their questions, and they're all set, and now it's time to close. Now, it's time to close.
Sign here.
Oh. And this is a time when people either make it or they break it. And sometimes agents make too big of a deal, because when they get to that point, it's like, dun, 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 dun. Drum roll, please, and here comes the close. Are you ready? And they make too big of a deal out of it, right? Yeah. And they separate it from everything else. Listen, Roberta doesn't know this, but I accidentally was overhearing her in the other room closing. And I have to tell you, it was a natural close. When you were in the other room with George,
What did I say?
you see, she's just such a natural,
It's
right? And I don't remember the exact words, but she went from showing the paperwork to getting him to sign the forms. And, she talked briefly about the brokerage fee and this and that, and I just heard the the seller signing, you know, and talking.
Papers.
And what seemed so beautiful to me is like music to my ears, Roberta, you don't know this, I haven't talked to you about this yet, but is the fact that it just was part of the she didn't separate it and make a big deal out of it. It was all part of the process. Maybe because she's done it so many times, it was just kind of smooth, natural process. And she also knew in her heart of hearts that this person is going to sign this form. The best thing, you know, we had a conversation, and Roberta's telling me that this person is trying to sell for sale by owner. That is not in their best interest to do that. She believes in her heart of hearts that no one should be going out there trying to sell their house on their own, taking time, energy, and effort away from their job and other things that make them money to try to be a real estate agent. And when Roberta mentioned that to him, what did he say?
He said, well, he first said, let me think about that, and the next day he said, you're right, I don't wanna be a realtor.
Right. If you want to be a realtor, come join.
I don't like your job.
Yeah, I don't like it. He said, I don't watch it. He said, and then he said, how do you do this every day, right? That's what he said, right? So it was good. You give him some time to get beat up a little bit and know what it's like. So anyway, it was a natural. I mean, I was thinking about that because it just flowed. And so don't take a deep breath. Don't wiggle. Don't separate the clothes. Just kind of ease right into it. Just like you did when you eased into ringing the doorbell, smile, paying the clock, take to the kitchen table, get up and look around the house, get back to the front, talk about why they're sold on you and your company, why so many people buy from you and your company, right? And then you go into your marketing and your presentation where you should just flow right into the close, okay? That might be hard the first time because you might be a little nervous, but work on that. See, in these training workshops, it's my goal, and the best thing that I can do here is only to bring it to your attention. I can't help you develop the skill that's going to make you a pro. Only you can do that when you go out there and do it and start implementing it. Yes, Roberta.
I just wanna say one thing, that you really did make a difference to me before I met you and after.
Yes.
And one of the things was I would go to a listing appointment expecting not to get the listing.
Wow, okay, yeah.
And now I go expecting to get the listing. I have the paperwork all filled out. I
Yes.
have the listing agreement,
Yeah.
everything in the whole seller thing is filled out. I just expect, I'm
Right.
like surprised now if they don't want
Right,
to.
absolutely.
So that's the biggest difference. I really expect, my expectation is different.
I might put you on a spot a little bit because we haven't rehearsed this, but what is it that changed your mindset about that? What happened that triggered that? Maybe that will help other people to.
I don't know. Well, what was it? It was just that I was more prepared. You said, what do you go with to a listing presentation? The answer is everything.
Yes.
And I never went with everything. I went expecting to give something and not get something back.
Right.
And
Leave something behind.
not get anything in return.
Right.
Now it's
And
like,
let them think it
no.
over,
Yeah.
which they never do, right?
I mean, I really
Yeah.
do bring everything,
That's great.
everything with
Excellent.
me and expect that, why not me?
Right. And Roberta and I have talked about this before too. If she wants it, she expects to take it if she wants it. She may get there and decide she doesn't want the listing, and that's okay, right? Because worse than having a listing that won't sell, worse than having no listing at all, is having a listing that won't sell, right? Some of you experienced people have felt that before, right? You know what that's like, right? Absolutely. So, thank you very much, Roberta, for saying that. That was great. Now, so some agents make a big deal out of it. Now, we have three what?
Key.
Three keys. Who has the first key? Numero uno key. Ken, if you can tell us what your key is.
It is that second that makes the natural.
It is that second that makes the natural. And what I mean by second, I mean the second that, well, I just mentioned it actually, I just talked about it. The second where you go from talking about asking them if they have any questions to sliding that piece of paper in front of them. There's a split second that occurs, and if you just are natural and normal during that split second that occurs when you make the transition from presenting to closing, gang, are you with me on this? You understand where I'm coming from? You know where I'm going? You know where I'm coming? You know what I'm saying? When it's that split second, that's what makes you a natural. Is if you can control just that split second, okay? Who has key number two?
I do. Pressure is normal.
Judy, pressure is normal. Is that true, gang?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, here's what happens. Here's the reality of it. Key number 2, pressure is normal. When you ask somebody to sign something, what happens is they might get a little uncomfortable. And remember what I talked about last week when I said DW? Remember what that stands for?
Drywall.
Drywall, that's a good one, yeah.
Don't waffle.
Don't waffle, yeah, don't wiggle, very close, Sandy, that was good. You get an A- for that was good. So, don't wiggle, right? Well, guess what? It's that time when there's a little tension, when you slide the paper in front of them and you hand them the pen, and they're gonna wiggle. In fact, the more uncomfortable they are, the more they wiggle. But here's the point that I wanna convey to you folks, and please write this down if you haven't already done this. Pressure is normal. Wiggling is normal. It's all part of you getting to the point where you can help them, and you can't help them until you get past that point. You can't help them until you get the listing. You can't get the listing until they sign something. You follow me? So pressure is what, gang? Let me hear it.
Normal.
Normal. Oh, that's good. All right. Number 3, who has the third one?
I do.
Becky, what do you have?
Don't close too hard.
Don't close too hard. Absolutely. And that was one of the biggest mistakes that some people do, is they close too hard, right? So don't close too hard. Now, what I'm going to do,
Can you give us an example?
Example, yeah.
oh, well, how about, why don't some of you give me an example of that?
Sign
What's,
here, or I'm going home.
sign here or I'm going home, right? What are some other examples of closing too hard? Yes, John?
Well, you start packing your bag, and this would be the normal procedure.
Yeah, that's normal. That's
Yeah.
not closing too hard.
No.
That's
That's an
absolutely.
easy way to do it.
That's a great way to do it, absolutely, very good. But how many of you have ever been in a sales situation where you ever interviewed people to put an alarm in your house? Or putting new windows in your house?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Or going to shop for a car, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, all of you have had at least one experience with that, where someone has tried to close you too hard and it turned you off. What did they do? Let me hear some examples. Everyone should have at least one example, so come on, volunteer, what do you have for an example?
Pressure, they put too much pressure on you.
How did they do that? What did they say? What did they do? Do you remember?
Yeah, they told me that if you didn't sign today, you wouldn't get it at this price.
Right.
Ah,
Oh,
see?
yeah.
Yeah, the price
No,
factor.
actually it was gutters.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Right, what else? What else have you heard out there? Yes,
I
Linda?
just bought a new car and the sales girl said it was her first day, so she needed a sale, and the other salesman with her said, oh, please, we need to make 10 transactions and we only have 9. And they were really,
They were just
they
begging.
were making me. I did buy it.
It worked?
But yeah, they were very, and they thought I was tough.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course, they wanted you to believe anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they
What
were,
company was it?
Curry, Honda.
And what were you gonna say,
No.
Andre? No, you had something you were gonna volunteer earlier.
No, I had experience with the cabinet to refacing, and they did exactly the same thing. They wanted to sign. They wanted me to put refacing cabinets for $18,000
Oh, okay.
in my kitchen, and he used this technique. They said that if you don't sign today, you're not gonna be able to get this great deal.
Right.
And
Is
after-
that Sears?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did it to me.
Oh,
too.
Sears
After
obviously.
I said no, he said,
Get
I'll
brand
make a
new
phone
ones,
call,
big
he make a
ones.
phone call, he says, how about $8,000? He dropped $10,000 within the 2 seconds, I said
Oh
no.
my goodness.
I said,
That's
no,
like
you want to
a-
spend 2.5 hours, but it was just
Wow.
$8,000 for cabinets, I could go to Home Depot, get for $2,500 and
Sure,
do the rest
absolutely.
for.
Yeah.
Andre, invite me over, have you and your wife make me a nice meal, I'll help you put them in for you too. How's
Sounds
that?
good,
You and I will work together on it. I have tools, I have all that kind of stuff, we'll have fun.
I'm sure you will.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
But they were really pressured you. What else?
Well, they just, I guess they just keep asking why.
Yeah,
You know,
just keep,
why not, and you just have to keep coming up with excuses. I mean, they just literally don't stop asking, why
Right.
not, why not, why not?
yes, closing too hard.
They insult you.
Yeah, and insult you, make you feel stupid if you don't do it, and things of that nature, right?
Try to make you feel guilty.
Try to make you feel guilty, emotions. You know, the reason why they use these techniques is because they what?
Get your emotions and make
Fine.
it.
Well, they work, unfortunately, it's
Yeah.
kind of,
Oh,
you know,
okay,
I mean,
yeah.
listen, gang, if it didn't work, they wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, doing it, it's,
Like, how can you
it's
pass
been
this
around
up,
for
you know,
1,000
and then you
years.
think, well, how can I, you know?
Right. So, I'm gonna teach you a 7-step process, gang, today, right now. Some of you are salivating just thinking about the 7-step process, you're so excited about it, where you don't come across, where you don't close too hard, right? Where you're not gonna wait for the sellers to close themselves, because we know that never happens, and when it does, you know, we hope that we give enough great information and we give them such a fantastic presentation, we're hoping they're gonna close themselves, and they don't. Again, giving an option to decide, if you leave it up to them, they'll decide to what? Not decide,
Yeah.
right. I'm gonna show you a 7-step process where you're not gonna make the mistake of making a big deal out of it. It's gonna be a natural transition, a natural close. Gonna touch on that second that will make you a natural. I'm gonna share with you how pressure is normal in the 7-step process and to be okay with it. And then also, it's a process, Carol is gonna show you how to not close too hard. Okay, and so that's what I'm gonna share with you right now. But before I get into the 7-step process, I wanna share something with you. This business, gang, this business of real estate that we're in has nothing to do with houses. It has nothing to do with financing. You as a salesperson, this business has everything to do with you persuading people to do things that they will later on thank you for. You follow me?
Mhm.
It says a lot, doesn't it? This business is about persuading people to do things that they will thank you for, because here's the bottom line. Someone is going to persuade that seller to list with them. And if it's not you, they're gonna end up with someone else. Now, who's better, you or your competitors?
We are.
We are.
We are, absolutely, right? You are. Isn't it in the seller's best interest that you take that listing? Gang, let me tell you something. If I was sitting at the table on a listing appointment, and I had a seller in front of me, and I knew in my heart of hearts that the best thing they could possibly do was to list with me and my company, I would close and close and close and close. Okay? Because I knew for a fact that they would thank me for it later on. I knew that it was in their best interest. Remember what I said, months ago? I said, listen, the difference between a pro and a con, a professional and a con artist, is they both use technique. The difference is intent, right? A professional has pure intent to help another person, to help them in such a way and help them so much that they'll literally thank you for it later on. Okay, gang? So you have to get over that mindset of, well, I don't wanna use technique, I don't wanna use dialogue because someone used that on me and it made me feel uncomfortable. Well, I'm not gonna teach you technique and dialogue that's gonna make them uncomfortable, that's going to make them feel bad. That we're gonna do it in such a way where it totally and completely is gonna show them that you have their best interest at heart and you're going to help them, okay? So you ready for the 7-step process? Let me hear it.
Yes.
All right, good. Number 1, and I put a little visual there together for you. And what's that a picture of, number 1? Net, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So step number 1 is to get an agreement on the net. Get an agreement on the net.
Based on what?
Well, let me clarify a little more. Let me answer your question, but it's get an agreement on the net. In other words, never talk price. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna say, based on, this would be your sale price, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and the last sheet of your presentation, of your analysis, will have a net sheet. And it'll have the price range, it'll sell it between $300,000 and $325,000 is the price range, based upon deducting all of the expenses, your first and second mortgage, your fee for service for the listing company, the listing agent, the selling company, the selling agent. You break the brokerage fee down into 4 different areas and have 4 different prices on the right-hand side of how each person is separating all 4. and then you go into, the different inspections that they're going to need to perform, and then you end up with a net. And so based on the net, you're going to net in your pocket, somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 in your pocket.
Do
And
we
then
do
you simply-
closing costs in there too? Should we put that in there?
Yeah, for the seller.
Yeah.
Right, anything the seller would
Right.
incur as an expense, tax stamps, having their septic system certified, things of that nature, smoke certificate, right? Everything they need that they're going to spend money on, legal fees, anything they're going to spend money on to close the property, you add all those things in, at the bottom of the page, you come up with their net, and then you say this. Based on what you're gonna net in your pocket, is that a number you can, are these numbers that you can live with? And always give a range, always use this terminology, use this dialogue, you ready? Somewhere around, right, let's hear that, ready, go.
Somewhere around.
Right, exactly, you guys are good.
What did you say before that, based on the
Sure.
money in your pocket?
Mhm.
Can you live with this?
Yeah,
Can you live with this?
Can you live with this? And use your own words,
Right.
feel comfortable, changing it up however you feel, but I just used to use, are you comfortable with this range? And can you live with this? Now, but I stopped getting away from, are you comfortable with this, because I started to go on listing appointments where it was -25, somewhere around -35. And I'd say, are you comfortable with this? And they'd say, no. And then I'd say, can you live with this? And they'd say, yeah, I'm gonna have to. I said, okay. I mean, after watching that David Knox Pricing Your Home to Sell video, it was in the bag. I mean, basically, can you live with this? There were no objections. David Knox handled every single one of them for me. It was great. I loved it. Made it so easy, so smooth. So, number two is ask your closing 2-word sentence. And what is the best closing sentence in the world, gang? What is it?
Any questions?
Any questions? Any questions? See, I try to give you a little hint with the pictures in there, Like that game years ago, Concentration, remember that game where they put the pictures and you'd have to make the words out of it? I love that game, but we should bring that back.
I thought he
That'd
had
be
something
great.
in his ear.
Howie Mandel should,
Howie Mandel, yeah, like, let's make a deal.
Right.
Is that different than saying what do you
It looks
think?
like,
Yes, it's very different, it's very different, because when you say any questions, they're going to say, yes, I have a question, or yes, I have a couple of questions, or I have a question, but you're gonna answer the question, and then you're gonna say any other.
Questions.
And when they're done, blah, 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 then you move on to step number 3.
Sign here.
Step number 3 is show them the forms. Show them the forms.
John,
Yes.
we've been out of this business for a long time now. Aren't we, when Mike talked about sending everything to the seller?
Yes, there's a pre-listing
Yeah,
package,
okay.
yes.
But are we still required to go through everything with the seller? I mean, aren't we
Yes.
supposed to be reading it with them, making sure they understand everything?
That's a great point, and that was the next point that I was going to make, actually. You're right on track. When I say show them the form, right, what you want to do is you want to briefly explain each paragraph and not read it every word for word for them, but explain each paragraph what it means. Now, some of you are a little nervous right now because you don't know what each paragraph means. You've probably read it once or maybe never, and you're not real comfortable with all the forms. So very simply, all you need to do is, honest to God, gang, I have agents come into my office all the time, not just here, but in every place I've ever worked, all the way back to 1996. Agents come into me and they'll say, which is the first year I started managing, they'll say, what does this form mean? What does it say? And so many times, I've always wanted to say, well, just read it and you'll know. But I've always, I smile, I say, no problem, let's figure this out together, and work through it. But, the bottom line is, gang, you'd know what all this stuff is if you just read it. And read it real quick, with them, and if they have questions about it, you can answer it with them or read it a little more in detail. But you want to be able to know your forms well enough so that you can just briefly explain what each paragraph is, okay? Show them all the forms and briefly describe them. That's step number 3, okay? Number 4 is, what can
Any
you guess number
questions?
4 is?
Any questions?
Any further
Bird is on
questions?
fire today, look at her go. Any what, gang?
Further questions?
Any
You got it. It's only 2 words. I wanna make it simple, I don't wanna complicate it by making it 3. Right? Any questions? And then they'll say,
Okay,
No.
they'll say yes, they'll say no. I have a question, how does that box work? Can anybody get in there with that lockbox? How does that work? Handle the objection, right? I don't know if I want a sign in my yard, I don't want my neighbors to know.
No
Oh,
problem.
no problem. The only concern I have is that this will be the biggest kept secret in town. What? What do you mean by that? Well, let me explain. Then you go into handling the objections, right? So number 4 is go for the close, right? Number 5 is, well, I guess the best way for me to describe number 5 is to ask for the order. Number 5 is ask for the order.
what order? The
Ask
pizza
for
order,
the
the
listing.
organization?
Ask for the
Ask for
order.
the listing.
In other words, ask them to sign the form. Ask
We've
them
already
to-
done that, I thought in
Yeah.
3.
What's that?
I think we do that
No,
in
you're just
3.
explaining it,
No.
Right,
No.
you're just
Oh.
explaining it.
You don't just say sign here in 3, I thought that's what we were
No,
saying.
just explain it.
Okay, cross
You're
that
gonna
one
show them the
off.
forms. After you show them all the forms, you explain agency, you explain lead paint, you explain your marketing agreement, you explain why you need a 180-day listing, which we talked about when? Last week, right? How to get a full-term listing and why you need one. After you explain all the forms, then you simply look at them and say, any questions? See, you have to trial close after each period, after each step you go through. So then you say, any questions? Then after you say any questions, you ask for the order, and what you wanna do is you wanna direct their signature. Now, here's a good closing question. Okay, why don't you do this? Watch this. Did you see that?
Hand them the
Hand them the
pen.
pen.
I just handed the pen, and what did she do?
Took it.
Reach for
And
it.
she took it, right?
Yeah.
So then I would say to Judy, why don't we do this? Why don't you go ahead and approve these forms? I'll get the sign in the yard in a couple of days. And then, like what John was
But I don't want a
describing earlier.
sign. I don't want the neighbors to know I'm selling it.
But I just asked you, but see, she's playing hardball right now because we're in the training class. Well, listen, I already asked you if we were really doing this, if you had any questions. And you said,
No.
no. So assuming I handled all the questions, what's the next natural phase? Watch this. You ready? Okay, any questions, Judy?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you have for questions? And I'd answer our questions,
All right.
right? And so, why don't we try this? Roberta, do you have any questions? If they're both selling a house, she doesn't, Roberta's been really much better to deal with. I say, Roberta, any questions? No questions? Okay, here you go. Why don't you do this? Why don't you go ahead and approve these forms, and I'll get the sign in the yard in a few days. And then, what I want you to do, gang, is I want you to do, I want you to, to cushion it as you're saying this to them. And I want you to say something like, press hard because, so that it goes all the way through to your copy. Or, don't lose that pen, it cost me $1.
Ah!
You know what I mean? And so you wanna cushion it, If you like that, smile, because what's happening? They're wiggling, they're nervous, and
They're nervous.
you just cracked a little joke and you made it funny, I would say press hard, cheap carbon, but the younger people wouldn't even know what that meant.
No.
No, they don't know what carbon paper is, So you might have to say, press hard so it goes through to your copy. And then step number 6, by the way, I jumped ahead, is to hand them the pen. Step number 6 is to hand them the pen. Hey gang, I learned this at Advanced Real Estate School, I'm gonna share with you right now, and I learned this, and going to Advanced Real Estate School, I kinda learned this all on my own, and here's what I figured out. I'm so proud of myself for doing this. If they don't have the pen in their hand, they can't sign anything. It's true. So they have to have the pen in order to sign something. So what do you do, gang? You number 6 them, right? You hand them the pen,
Hand them a
right?
pen.
Now,
May I give them a present?
I'll tell you a really true story. This is funny, a really funny story that's a true story. And by the way, I was not laughing at the time. I went to someone's home to list their property, and while I was there, I asked them, as they were showing me around the house, I asked the question, because we didn't get to this in the rapport building stage, because they were too much in a hurry, so I was trying to build rapport, we were looking around the house, and I said, so what do you folks do for work? And the gentleman said to me, he said, well, I'm a professional sales trainer, and my wife here is a professional, she owns her own marketing company, and she helps large businesses handle all their marketing. And as I was walking up the stairs, I went, oh my God, I'm like, wow, holy moly. And because I knew I had to go back to the kitchen table, right? And tell them all the reasons why people list with me and my company. And I thought, holy moly, I felt like I was going to be under a microscope with these people. And when I got there, and I got to the part where I explained everything, and I was really on a roll and very excited and things were going well, because I really believed in my presentation, and I knew that my competitors probably weren't going to do as good a job as I was selling and marketing myself and my company in their home. And I got to the part where I explained to them all the forms, and they were just like, okay. And I got to the part where I wanted to hand them the pen, and guess what happened?
You didn't have one.
I had no pen.
Oh, no.
So I immediately had this perspiration, just, you ever work out and exercise and there's a certain point when you're working out, you start perspiring, but before then you're not? Well, that happened to me right then and there. It's like beads of sweat off my forehead, nervous, and I thought to myself, my mouth became really dry.
I had a panic attack.
Yeah, and I said to myself, I just thought to myself, because these people were in the business and they were professionals and they were teaching this, I thought to myself, wow, I really blew it. Like, I forgot, like, cardinal sin #1, always have a what, gang?
Pen.
Yeah, well, this bozo didn't have one. And I thought, oh, boy, this is not good. So I did the only thing I just instinctively thought I could do, and that was to try to make a joke out of it. And I looked at the professional sales trainer, and I said, I guess I broke cardinal sin #1, I don't even have a pen. And while I was saying that, his wife was getting up and going through the kitchen junk drawer, and everyone has one of those drawers. Do you have one of those drawers in your
Yes.
house?
At
We
least
we have stuff in it, right?
I gotta lie.
And she's looking through the drawer, and behind me, looking for the pen, and I'm sitting there going, ugh. I do this when I'm stressed. I go like this to my eyebrows. I go, ugh.
Comb them.
Yeah, I comb my eyebrows like this, right? And I said, I guess I really, broke the first cardinal sin, which is to not have a pen. And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, John, he said, no. He said, that's fine. He said, look behind you. Look, wife's looking for the pen. He said, it worked. Yeah. He said it works. Yeah, in other words, and I had a conversation with him after the fact, after I listed his property. And his whole method of selling was, it's okay to get them to do some things for you. But what he was trying to show me is that it just naturally worked. Like it was working. Everything I was doing was working. The fact that I didn't have a pen worked because she was up looking for a pen.
Your reaction was probably natural too, like you didn't fake not having a pen, you really didn't have a pen.
I really didn't have a pen.
Probably very natural.
Right. So you know what, gang? It's okay if something happens that kind of goofs you up a little bit. If you do 99% of this stuff, you'll be on track. It'll work, okay? I did get the listing, by the way. Now, hand them a pen. If it's not in the hand, they won't sign it. And step number 7, which is really important right here, gang. What do you think I wrote? I drew a picture there of
Wrap it all
gifts,
up.
right?
Give
Wrap
them
it
a
up. Wrap it up, and that's what John was describing earlier. So, for instance, it works like this.
Only after we.
I'm gonna go through the process up here, you ready? So basically what you're going to end up with in your pocket is, somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 in your pocket. Can you live with that figure?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do they, at this point, should they be kind of writing this down? Wouldn't they be interested in writing this down?
Who?
The seller?
No, I already have it in writing,
Oh,
a
you-
net sheet. I'm
Really?
showing them the net sheet. You can print that up right out of your CMA Pro program. It's in the back of the program. Choose it as one of your options. It will calculate the net for you. Unfortunately, it only gives you one single column and one number, so you wanna give them a range. And so what you do is you're showing them the net sheet as the last part of your presentation, right? and you're showing them the net sheet, and you say to them, you're gonna end up in your pocket, somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000. And this is already prepared when you get to the house. Now, what if you get there and the place is a complete dump and you have to knock the price down 50 grand? Well, adjust your net sheet right then and there, right? Just take out your calculator, and if you don't have one, ask them to get theirs, right? See how that works? And then you get an agreement on the net. If you don't have an agreement on the net and they say, John, we just can't live with that. No, we have to, we need that money in order to move. And I said, well, unfortunately, whether I list the property or anyone else, the money's just simply not there. And you've heard how David Knox explained that on the video, of course. So I guess the choice one would be to decide not to move. So here's what I'll do. I'll keep in touch, and they'll say, oh no, well, we have to move. Well, then this is what you're gonna end up netting in your pocket. Oh, we can't live with that money. Well, then the choice would have to be to stay here. You see, gang, there's only two choices. The third option is not you doing what?
Dropping your trust.
Right.
Trying it. There's no sense of trying at a higher price when you know it's not going to sell. Don't let them down, and tell them that. Say, the last thing I wanna do is be the person that lets you down. I'd rather let you down now than disappoint you later. I'd rather tell you the truth.
Turn you down now than let you down later.
Turn you down now than let you down later. I like that. That's
What
much
was what you
smoother. I like that.
Last week when you were talking about, remember the house and the price, and you were saying what's more important to you, really getting the house or the price?
Yeah. Right. What's more
I
important?
used
You
that
need
on
to
one
move?
woman, and
Oh,
so
you
she
did?
went, so she went up, like $3,000 in her bid for the house.
Oh, good. So you
Yeah,
used it
so
on a
did
buyer.
her. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
good. That's great.
Yeah, I said to her, well, really think about it, what's more important, do you really want this house,
Absolutely. Do you want the house?
Right.
Absolutely.
So that was from what you said.
Yeah, and it's a good point. And now they're gonna thank you. See, you're helping them make a decision, they're gonna thank you for it. Because if they would have quibbled over $3,000, $5,000, $15,000, $13,000, they would have lost the house, and then how would they feel?
Right.
You know, over a 30-year mortgage, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. And now they have the house that they want, you know? So, based on the net, I wanna try this again, you ready? I wanna go on the net, I'm gonna say, listen, based on what we've come up with on a sale price, you're gonna net, somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000. Can you live with that figure? And the seller says,
Yes.
yes, okay. Any questions? And the seller says,
No.
No.
sometimes they do, if they do, they handle it, right? All right, well, let me show you the forms that we have here. This is the lead paint, this is what we do, this is how we do it. This is what this means, this is what that means, and I go through all the forms. After I'm finished going through all the forms, and I'm all done with that, explain to the forms, and I simply ask them, the closing question, which is 2 words. What is it? Let me hear it.
Any
Further
questions?
Any questions? And then if there are no more questions, then I simply ask for the order. So what I do is by asking for the order, I hand them the pen, and I just simply say, the next step is, all you need to do is just put your approval on these forms right here. I'll get the sign in the yard in a few days, and then do number 7, which is this.
Pack your bag.
Pack your bag.
Yeah.
And you start packing up all your marketing materials, all your stuff, close your presentation book, start rifling everything in your briefcase as if everything were
Normal.
Right, absolutely. Okay, gang.
And then you can go out and turn on the
Celebrate.
radio and.
Yeah.
Be all
Get in the
happy.
car and be happy, absolutely. Call someone who cares and says, hey, guess what I just did, you know? Or someone who's gonna be happy for you, you know? Don't call another agent in your office and say, hey, I just got a listing, and they're like, oh yeah, but what price? You know, don't call those people. You know, those
Call your
negative
mother.
people. Yeah, those
Right.
negative
Yeah.
Nellies,
Call
right?
your mom.
Call someone who's gonna be happy for you. Now, here's what I wanna do next. We're gonna go through I wanna ask you as a group, okay, this is the time for interaction. I wanna ask you as a group, give me some negative feedback. What are the negative things that you can do or experience or have if you say to a seller, well, what do you think? Everything? Yeah.
Nightmare rates are too low.
It's a nightmare, the price is too low.
They kept asking me, how long have you done this? How many listings do you have? Have you been in this business a long time? You know, and they kept hammering at that.
But you
And knowing, like dialogues, like for instance, Judy brings up a good point. How long have you been in this business? How many, there's certain dialogues, like there's certain things that people can say to you that you can have the answers for. And what's beautiful about real estate, and I was talking to Ken about this the other day, is that there is a finite number of objections that you could possibly hear as an agent working with a buyer or seller. There is a finite number of things that you need to know in real estate we were talking about. That's the beautiful part. Sure.
Judy just needs some dialogue about it. She's been in the real estate business. How long have you owned your houses? And do you own more than one house?
Do I own, yeah.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
been in the real estate business a long time.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Huh?
okay.
That's good.
Alright, that's good. I need dialogue to come back because I
Yes.
said, because I was like, bah.
You can say, I bought my first house in 19 whatever,
I
right?
bought sold
65.
properties for, since 19,
Yeah, and
Right.
that, and they just might
I
look
like
at you and go,
That was good, Roberta.
yeah, that's a good one. Yes.
I don't know where I heard it, but
It's not a lie.
It's true.
You know, they ask how long
If you
you've
can hear
been in
me,
the
say
business,
shh.
say, long enough to know what I'm doing, but not too long to have bad habits.
Oh, that's
Right.
good, I like
Oh, that's
that.
good.
Long enough to know what I'm doing, but not
That's
too
good.
long to develop bad habits.
That's
Wow.
good. You should have been with me.
That's
I've
good.
used that, people are like, "Oh," I mean, they don't,
Yeah.
you're not giving them the answer, but it's enough to
Right,
tell them.
right.
The one that comes to my mind the most is when you say to a seller, you know, well, there's a difference. I think what you're asking me, am I new or experienced? Is that what is your real concern? Well, in real estate, there's no such thing as new versus experienced. There's only active versus proactive. In other words, Mr. and Mrs. Seller would do you no good to hire an experienced agent, either myself or a competitor,
They don't do anything.
if they're not proactively marketing your home. And they're not up on all the latest laws and rules and regulations. So what you're really looking for, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I know what you're saying to me. You want someone who's active, who's actively gonna get your home sold and knows what they're doing. Is that right?
Someone enthusiastic about
Yeah.
having
Right.
a listing.
Right,
And then you just look at them and smile and go, that's me.
right.
I mean, they're
I'm that
been
person.
around for
Yeah,
50 years.
Sandy,
I just wanted to say there's a big difference
True.
between saying,
Well, they don't even read their email.
do you have any questions, and, well, what do you think? I think if you say, do you have any questions, it leads to something they truly don't understand.
yes,
But if you say, well, what do you think, that leads to negative,
yes,
I think.
absolutely.
So keep it on the
Right.
positive side.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you all hear that? Great point, great point. There is a big difference between saying, what do you think versus any questions. What do you think can bring out and elicit more negative comments and things.
I think what do you think is more emotion based?
Absolutely, and that's
So
the
you're
key.
asking for their emotion as opposed to the facts.
You got it, Chris. Absolutely, absolutely. It's more emotion based versus sticking with the facts, right? Just the facts, man. Right? Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention to you is this. This is what I would call, this really is a question that goes out to you experienced people in the room. Raise your hand if you're experienced. Okay, good.
Now I think I'm
All right.
experienced.
What I want you to share with the group now is this. The seller's response to closing for a signature. You've been out on a listing appointment, you're asking them to sign the forms and approve the forms and all that good stuff. And what are some of the responses that you've been able to get or you've heard about people getting in real estate? To signing the form.
The objections?
Yeah, the responses, in other words,
I'm not ready.
I'm not ready, okay, yep,
I'm interviewing
absolutely.
a number of
I have to
agencies.
think it over.
I have to think it over, what else?
I'm interviewing a number of agents.
I'm interviewing a number of agents. You know what you're all telling me? You're all telling me you need to come to the next week's session because I'm gonna cover those things. So absolutely, they're gonna give you those objections, right? But now feel this, a lot of these objections, like Carol, you brought up a great one, which is, I'm not ready yet, right? Well, if we do our pre-qualifying questions in the beginning, then we would know if they're ready yet or not. But sometimes, Carol brings up a great point because we ask all the questions and they say, yes, I have to move, and yes, I have to move in 3 months, and then they say, well, we're just not ready yet. And it's at that point you would wanna ask, well, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that you're not ready to do yet, and why? You just have to simply ask why. They said, well, we're just not ready yet because we wanna mow the front lawn before you put the sign in it. And you thought they just weren't ready to list. And so you leave all your stuff on their table because you think they're gonna call you back. Yeah.
Go mow the lawn.
Ken's gonna go mow the lawn, right? There you
6%
go.
I'll mow the lawn.
For 6%, he'll mow the lawn, absolutely, that's great. And then you put the sign in the other. So it's always good to ask the questions, right? Let me ask you this, you experienced people in the room. What do you say when you close?
Thank you.
Okay, That's good. Is that what you say after you close?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What do you say to close though? To close. In other words, there's a certain set of words that you all say when you get to the point where they need to sign something. And what is it that you say? Becky?
Just let them know that we have a few company forms that I need to go over with them and have them sign off on, and then we'll be ready to get their listing up and running.
Great. Did y'all hear that? I have a few forms I want you to look at and sign off on, and we'll be ready to get your listing up and running. Right? What else? What are some other closes? No? That's okay. I mean, listen, you came to the right class, gang. Seriously. You came to the right class. It's really, really, really important. Listen, it's not 99% of the people in the business aren't closing, gang. Remember what I said at the beginning of the class. We're doing the listing, we're doing the lead-in, the investigating, the show and sell, but when it comes to the tie-down, very, very few, hardly if any, people have a closing process, a technique, a set of words to say. I remember Floyd Wickman telling a story in one of his training sessions that he met a woman in Louisville, Kentucky. And she went up to him and said, Floyd, I'm doing everything, it's not working. He says, well, talk to me, what's going on? She goes, I went on 8 listing appointments, and I didn't get one. And he said, well, you're not closing. And she said, yes, I am. He said, let me hear it. He said, no, you're not. She said, yes, I am closing. He said, no, you're not closing. She said, yes, I am closing. He said, let me hear it. And she looked at him and said, what? You're closed. What do you say? What are the set of words that you say before you, to get them to sign the forms?
No, just sign
And
here.
she just looked at him and didn't know what to say. She's like, And Floyd looked at her and said, you're not closing. You're not closing. So what do you have to do to be successful in real estate, gang?
Close.
Close. I was waiting for someone to say everything, right? No. But absolutely, you have to close. Did you get some value out of today's session? Did you
What are
like
the
it?
words?
Yeah.
What are the
What's it?
words,
Give
like
us
what
the
she said, you
Fisher
looked over the
Price
forms.
words.
Oh, the words to close?
Yeah, what do you use?
I use this. I say, all you need to do now is simply approve these forms and I'll get the sign in the yard in a
Like
few
what she
days.
said.
And then I wrap up. That's all. I just keep it short, you know? And like Becky has her set of words that she uses. It's a set of words you use on a consistent basis each time. Yes, Audrey.
Most of the time, they wanna know, what do I have to do to the house to
Okay,
get it ready to sell?
absolutely. Here's what I say to that. What do I have to do to get the house ready to sell? All you need to do now is simply approve these forms. I'll make an appointment to come back and we'll review a list of items that I'm gonna ask you to do to get the home, to its peak level.
Showing.
You know,
But we
or,
can't sign the
Stage.
forms and date them.
no, you can't
Until
sign them
they
and date. I'm
come.
gonna ask you to sign them now, and then I'm gonna come back tomorrow or the next day, and I'm gonna walk around the house with you and tell you what needs to be done.
Can't you do it right then, after it's signed?
I've got
No?
another appointment at 8 o'clock, I'm
No.
sorry, I can't. But, you know, but I promise you, I will come back and we will get that done, we'll get that taken care of. Because here's what an average agent does. An average agent goes in and tells them all this stuff
As to-
before they get the what?
Listen.
Signature,
Listen.
yeah.
The value of the service is quickly
That's right.
diminished after the service is
Right.
performed.
True.
They don't need you anymore.
Right.
They've got your
That's what
price,
you
they've
did.
got your CMA,
That's
they
what
have all
happened
your
when I went to-
forms, they have your marketing plan, they know everything you're gonna do to sell the house, and they have it on their table, and they have your staging that you've performed to them all for free.
Yep.
Right.
They don't need you anymore.
Right.
So, I like what Judy said, before about holding the carrot there for them, you know,
Right.
about home rewards, and it's a reward for them that you share with them, you show them everything, all the discounts they're going to get after they list with you. Now, you could give them all the home rewards before they list with you, you could do that. But why? You're giving something away for free, right? What's that saying about the cow? I don't know. What-
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that go?
Right.
How does that go?
With the milk.
Does
I buy
anybody-
the cow when you can get the milk free.
Why buy the cow and you get the milk for free? Okay, yeah.
So you go through that sort of when you're packing up, when you're wrapping it up, that's when you can say, I'll come back and stage, and after you've gotten SIG and as you're wrapping up? No.
I'm just responding to a question that
Oh.
Audrey might have asked after I handed her the pen. Like at this point right here, I've handed her the pen, and I'm starting to wrap up, and she says, whoa, wait a minute, while she's got the pen in her hand, what about, and I'll say, and I just look up and I say, normally I say, oh, that's no problem, I'll come back another time, we'll set up a time for me to come back, and we'll go through a list of items to get that taken care of.
And then if she says, can you do it right now, you say you can't.
and I'd say, actually, you know, it would be best if we make another sign, because I really wanna make the time to do it right.
And the other thing is, people will ask me a lot, like, who do you use to do this and so, and I used to just pour it all out for them and never hear from them again. Like, all the guys that I referred all had business, but I did not.
Good point,
So I
right?
don't do that until I have a listing, and I say that, I'd be happy to share those names with you, you know,
Yeah.
once we get things into the listing and we're off and running.
Absolutely, what Roberta's
It's part
saying
of
is.
what I do
Yeah.
as a employee
Service,
person.
a service.
You're right, absolutely, absolutely. And you know what happens when Roberta does it, they want her more. There's more value to what it is she's bringing to the
Right.
table. There's less objection about her fee for service, because she's different than the other agents. The reason why they beat you up on your fee for service is that is when they don't see a difference between you and another agent. When all the agents look the same, the only way the seller can pick between all of you is price. So in order to go in there and look different, you have to show them a marketing plan that's enhanced, that's doing more than just putting a sign in the yard and putting it in MLS. Yes, Christine?
Going back to the question about staging, what if they don't ask, but when you walk into the house, you realize that there's some staging that needs to take place in order to best show the house?
Absolutely.
How do you gently, after getting the signature, say?
I have an answer for you.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
Go ahead.
Well, that happens so often, and you don't wanna be the bad guy, especially on the first, you know, you want
Right.
the listing, you don't wanna sound negative about anything.
Right.
I bring a card from a stager, and she's very reasonable, and, I haven't done this, but I'm going to. I'm gonna suggest that if they list with me, I'm going to pay the consulting fee of the stager once the house closes.
Well, I've done that, and I've offered that, it's about $150, and the person that comes in and does a 2 or 3 hour consultation and all
Yes,
that. But
does it
what I
work?
like to do actually is, because I can do it myself, is
You
offer
can
it as
do
a
it.
service, as
Don't-
part of the
just
overall package.
don't offer it right away. And the other
You're
thing
not-
is
you're
to
not saying my question
let
correctly.
other people tell them too, like, we're gonna tour it on Thursday.
Right, okay.
I just wouldn't be necessarily, I don't think it's a good idea to be so, they always thought that I was negative
Be a messenger.
if I
You know,
started out that way, but if other people tell,
If you
Yeah,
say
that's
something
something
like,
doing in the future, so when
Hold
they
on,
come back to the sign, then I'm gonna do.
Okay, I'm sorry, Christine,
That's
can you say a
a good
little
idea.
louder?
If you walk into a house and when you're showing around, well, one of the things was, should I do this or should I do this? I would, you know, you do that
Right.
stuff. But then if they don't ask you about changing your furniture or taking, you know, getting the clutter down, that kind of stuff, I would just put it in the marketing plan, you know, when you're gonna come back to do pictures, you know, or to come back and, you know, when you do it, you're gonna see them again.
I love that.
To just put it in the plan, to say, oh, and another thing we'll be doing, we'll meet again to do some staging and, you know, I'll give you some ideas, but that's, you're telling them you're gonna do it, so it's a service, but it's gonna be in the future.
Yes.
That's
What I-
after-
what I
after
love
the
about
signature.
What I love about what Christine is saying too is the fact that you wanna put a deadline on things. Like, I'm gonna make it a point, we're gonna come by on Thursday and I wanna take interior photos, and that we need that to properly market your home in the multiple listing service, because people look at these photos, and so before I do that, I'm gonna need you to do the list of the following things. And that's after you get the listing signed, okay? And so you tell them what things that need to be done. If these things aren't done, unfortunately, I cannot be held responsible for your home not selling. It's up to you. And say it with a smile, you know?
I have a question for Roberta.
Yes.
Do you have them pay for that fee up front and then you reimburse
Yes.
them later?
well, that's my intent, I haven't done it yet,
Oh.
but that's my intent. You pay now, and I'll pay later at the closing.
What do you do, John, when they say, well, you know, I wanna do these few things before I list? Can we post-date the contract?
You could have a non-MLS listing for a certain period of time, get the contract signed for today, and ask them to sign a non-MLS listing, and you don't put an MLS, you won't show the property, you're not gonna market the property until they give you the go-ahead.
And there's a form for that.
Yes, yep, and the good news part of it is that now you have the contract signed. See, if you don't have anything signed and you leave, there's a chance that they won't sign it ever again, or they'll sign with somebody else, and that's why these other salespeople and these other industries are saying, you need to do this now, or the price is not going to be good tomorrow, because they know that if you don't sign it today, the odds of you signing it tomorrow are zero.
So you don't post-date it, you do a non-MLS listing.
Well, for a week, you
posted.
can, for a week,
Right.
you can do it in MLS, you can, you know, defer showings for 1 week.
Oh, you can defer
Yeah.
showings, all right,
I
okay.
think
For
what-
one
Post-date the
week.
contract and don't put an MLS.
I
till
think
they're
what
ready.
I've done was.
What's that?
Can't you post-date and just not put it in until they're ready to?
Technically, you're not supposed to do that. You're
Yeah.
supposed to put the date on the contract is the date that they sign
They
it.
sign it.
Technically, that's how they're supposed to do it.
Legally,
Yep.
Legally, right.
Yeah, so you have, if you sign it today, you have to put today's date. You know, I know that some people are doing that to try to, you know, get it within the 24-hour period, but technically, that's how you do it. Yes,
By the way, what I've done before, and I think it was okay, we signed all paperwork in, let's say, in December, and we put on the listing that we're gonna start marketing in February.
Mm-hmm,
You can't do that,
yes,
right?
and you have a non-MLS listing. You
Well,
have,
I didn't have that form signed, non-MLS listing. It was not listed until 2 months later, it got on MLS. It was not marketed, nothing.
right,
But she signed 2 months before it was
Okay.
going on MLS.
all right. Technically, you're supposed to have it, put it in multiple listings within 24 hours if you don't have that non-MLS form signed, so.
Okay.
No big
Is
deal. You
that
didn't
form-
get caught, so you're okay. No one here is gonna turn you in, that's all right. Not a
is
big
that
deal.
farm available,
I didn't
John?
know that.
Yes, it is, absolutely. It's on, you can get it right on the multiple listing website. You have
Oh.
a section where you can click on forms and you get it right there. And by the way, I'm not a fan of that form. I hate that form. I don't think it's a good idea to use it unless you have a situation like Ken just described. That's the only reason why someone would ever wanna go non-MLS. Certainly I would never recommend a seller accept an offer from anyone if they hadn't put in an MLS first, because you've not truly done the best service you possibly can for the seller by not having it in MLS and getting the highest and best price possible by not having it in MLS. So it's a huge disservice to the seller. Yes. Any other questions?
So what is the result now? You've said so many things.
Yes.
Exactly, what do you do when they say, yeah, I have to wait a week or two, cause I need to paint these doors and all that. But I want them to sign that day, so that day they sign everything,
Yes.
and
Well, the first showing.
we'll,
And you can do
we'll have
one-
to put the date.
Sure, you can do one of two things. You can do what Roberta said, deferred showings for 1 week, or you can have them sign a non-MLS form that you're going to say to them, listen, I'm going to, we're going to defer the marketing and the showings and not put it in the multiple listing service, and I'm not gonna market and tell everybody about your property until you're done in 2.5 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now. This way, the benefit to you, and signing all these forms, I can get all the marketing materials, the brochures, the flyers, the advertisements. I can have all that, I can start working on that material right when I get back to the office. And so in 2.5 weeks, when you're ready for me to flip that switch, we're gonna hit the ground running.
What about if they could change their mind doing that too?
They've
They
signed
already
it.
signed the contract.
They signed it.
They signed, but it isn't dated,
Yeah,
so.
it's not-
No, it is dated.
No, it is
Yeah.
dated.
It is stated.
Yep.
You
Just
dated
Dated for that day. Yep.
Oh, then that's okay, do that way,
You signed
so
it for the
that's
day
okay.
or for the
Yeah,
2
that's
weeks?
okay. You can do it that way too, yeah, it works out pretty well.
Alright.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Good
then put
question,
it in
Mark.
the
Good
listing,
question.
this house cannot be shown until, that's all. Just so you know
Any
that
other
it-
questions?
yeah.
Okay, all you simply need to do now is sign this form, and I'll get the sign in the yard in a few days.
Anyone at this table?
Yes, if you could, hand forward your, testimonials, that would be outstanding. Looking forward to seeing you next Friday. Yeah, give yourselves a hand for being so awesome today, I appreciate it. And, you know what,
Thanks,
thank you for
John.
your interaction, we learned a lot from each other in these sessions, and I appreciate that. Have a great weekend, gang.
Hey, John.
Call me if you need anything, I'm available.
You wanna open the drawer, we'll throw it in?
No, because I have to, that's fine, yeah.
Excuse me?
How are you?
I'm fine, how you doing?
Good, thanks.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Oh, yeah.
It's great to see you too.
Yeah. I'll,
No, I wanted to tell you that when I bought the house on Oakland,
I can give it to you.
I was
Hi,
very
Paula.
impressed.
Hi, have a good one.
I think
You
you're one of the
too.
best
Yep.
agents.
Sandy, I gave you a call,
One of the
because
things
called
you
the North
do-
End because I had some programs with my cell phone last night.
That's one
They're
of the
lucky they
things.
didn't go.
Second thing you do is you know very much or know what's out there. When I was gonna buy the house, I didn't want Springfield.
Oh, yeah,
I had a set amount of money.